Welcome to ICAM and to this special program to discuss a topic which has been before the community for some time now and is coming to a decision point later in the month of May. It has to do with the Ipswich Mills Dam and whether it should be removed or not. It's a ballot question which will appear on the 21st of May, and we've assembled a group of individuals here who represent points of view in terms of whether to remove or retain the dam. The four individuals here are divided into two groups. We don't want this to be construed as a debate, but more of an informational forum so that perspectives can be given but not challenged necessarily or debated. So I'm going to ask the participants to introduce themselves, starting on my right.
Hi, I'm Wayne Castonguay. I'm a member of the town's Ipswich Mills Technical Advisory Committee, as well as the town Free the River Citizens Advisory Committee.
Hi, I'm Ann Carroll. I am a lifelong Ipswich resident. I'm also a river abutter. I'm also a member of the Free the River Citizens Group. And by training, I'm an aquatic ecologist, and I continue to work in that field.
Hi, I'm Eric Krathwall. I've been an attorney for the last 45 years, representing energy and water companies in state regulatory matters. I've lived in Ipswich for 35 years, for most of the last decade on the banks of the Ipswich River, about 500 yards upstream of the dam, and I've spent countless pleasant hours beside, on, or in the dam. I work with many long-term citizens seeking to save the dam for numerous reasons, which are described in our website.
Hi, my name's Carl Gardner. This is my 40th year as an Ipswich resident. One of my favorite family activities when my three kids were younger was to take them with their other friends and by a canoe to paddle from the Winthrop Street Bridge down to the Petefield Street public landing. I have a Bachelor of Science in Marine Biology from the University of Connecticut with a concentration in marine biology, as well as 2 years of graduate studies at the University of Rhode Island Department of Marine Affairs, focused on fisheries law and management. However, after serving 3.5 years as the conservation administrator in the town of Reading, I shifted careers to residential construction management. I'm now semi-retired and a volunteer member of the Ipswich Housing Partnership, and I'm also an active member of Save Our Dam.
Thank you all. The way we're going to proceed this afternoon is I've prepared with input from the forum members a series of topics, about 8 topics. I will read the topics that I wish to have discussed, and then we'll have one member from each of the groups respond to the topic as I've read it. So we'll start off with the first topic. Recognizing that one of the objectives of the proposed dam removal is the elimination of a significant obstacle to migratory fish which have historically moved upriver to spawning water bodies. Dam removal advocates assert that, of the alternatives examined, dam removal is the best alternative that would allow for passage around the dam. Dam non-removal advocates assert that alternatives have not been adequately studied. So I'll ask for discussion on that topic.
That's a great question, Jim. We agree there are several alternatives. I will say that an extensive alternative analysis was done going way back to 2010 when this project initiated. The town's technical advisory committee did about 4 years of alternative analysis, and those are described in the pre-feasibility study, which can be seen on the town's project website at ipswichmillsdam.com. All kinds of alternatives were looked at. We had the benefit of all the local fisheries experts from the State Department of Fish and Game Marine Fisheries, also the Federal Marine Fisheries Service, as well as local fishermen were extensively engaged. I should add that the current fish ladder at the Ipswich Mills Dam is only about 16 years old. I was involved in putting that together. That fishway currently is the state of the art. It really can't be improved. It's about as good as it gets. The only other alternative really for fish passage at the current dam site would be what's called a fish bypass, or what's otherwise known as a nature-based fishway. However, those require a lot of real estate and a lot of geography, which just isn't feasible with the highly built-up dam site. So other alternatives to fishway we looked at were partial dam removal, where you could lower the dam, and what we looked at initially was to lower the dam 2 or 3 feet, which roughly would equate with the original dam height, which did allow migratory fish to go over the dam for several hundred years until the current dam was built and raised by about that 2 or 3 feet in 1908, which prevented migratory fish from going upstream. So an extensive alternatives was done, and the conclusions are pretty simple. By far and away, the best alternative for fish passage is to have no dam, and all fish passage alternatives except for full dam removal will continue the ecological degradation of the dam site as well. So dam removal was selected as the best alternative.
Hi, my name's Carl Gardner. I'm representing the people who want to retain the dam but improve the fish passage at the same time, or at least have that seriously considered. If you notice by Wayne's comments, he was talking about technical advisories committee a long time ago that consisted mostly of state bureaucrats and a few staff people from the town. There wasn't really a broad representation of the true stakeholders on this dam removal project. And what we would maintain is that it would be excellent now, at least at this point, even though it's late in the game, to have representation by the true stakeholders in the broad community that would represent the whole diverse interests of the dam and its preservation. There's been a lot of NOAA-funded studies in recent history that have analyzed East Coast and diatomous fisheries and how to best facilitate their passage at low-head dams. And Wayne's statement about requiring a lot of real estate is accurate under certain circumstances, but not necessarily in all circumstances. And in this situation, when we have only a 6-foot dam, the design guidelines for a nature-like fishway, which is what they're called, NLFs for short, is to have a much wider pathway, a much flatter slope, and to imitate the flow of the water flow of a natural stream as much as possible. There is adequate room on the side of the dam where that abandoned fish ladder was located, and we provided prepared a schematic of meetings and exceeding the standards of for NOAA specified fishways for this river herring.
Thank you, Carl. The second topic has to do with the ecosystems that are involved. There is an established ecosystem that has been created by the dam and has been in existence for years and years. Dam removal would presumably destroy this existing ecosystem and replace it with a new ecosystem. Discuss why the existing ecosystem is to be preferred over the new ecosystem, and vice versa. Eric?
This is actually going to be Carl.
It's going to be Carl.
We're going to get worn out when we make that. The presumption that a new ecosystem can be restored in this environment is flawed in our opinion. The fact that we have a healthy ecosystem that's been established at least over the last 100 years, if not longer, that's functioning currently under periods of duress, which are more and more severe and more frequent, meaning the drought experiences that we have. Beyond the public water supply withdrawals from the watershed, we are now dealing with more frequent and more severe drought conditions, the worst of which I've seen here was in 2022. And without the dam, that freshwater impoundment behind the Ipswich Mills Dam and behind the Willowdale Dam up at Foot Brothers, we would have had a dead zone all the way up for miles from where the current dam is. So if you're going to remove the dam, you have to deal with how are you going to establish a new ecosystem in its place. Well, the tidal influence going up the river doesn't sustain itself all the way, so you're going to have twice a day exchange of tides where the bottom will be essentially a mud, a mud zone or whatever, or exposed to heat and the solar gain, and you're going to have the tidal waters that warm themselves as they go up the river, flushing out each time only to a point. And if you don't have freshwater flow to oppose them, you're not going to have the flows that are required to maintain this, quote, new ecosystem to sustain the migratory fish. There's endangered species, the red belly cooter, to name one of them, a turtle species that hasn't been identified in this study. And there's just a broad list of both aquatic life and from invertebrates on up to mammals that inhabit that area, and it's a healthy environment. It's functioning, and it's something that we should not mess with without improving at the same time the fish migration.
Thank you, Carl. Not to be presumptuous, is Ann going to respond?
Yes, thank you so much, Jim.
Okay.
So I guess the way we look at it is that removing the dam would not destroy what's currently there. It would help to restore and also enhance. So when we put that dam in, there was a cascading effect. So you took a flowing water system and turned it into kind of a ponded water system. So a lot of the species that need flowing water for some or all of their life cycle are suffering. But if we remove that, it allows them to come back, but it also allows the species that can survive in that ponded environment. They tend to be more generalist species, so they can still survive if you take the dam down. So I think we feel very hopeful that everything that exists there now could continue to do so, but also it would be a huge benefit. And I feel there's mountains of evidence from other dam removal projects that nature will heal itself. If you remove that harm that was done, bring the flow back. It eliminates the stagnation of the water behind the dam. The stagnation there causes, increased temperatures, dissolved oxygen problems. Potentially, I have concerns that we've seen other impounded rivers in Massachusetts, like the Charles and the Mystic. We've seen more and more cyanobacteria blooms happening, so I have concerns about that. All of those are removed. Those are all stresses on the ecosystem that would go away. So we don't see it as destroying something. We see it as, sort of restoring and enhancing.
Thank you, Ann. Although not nearly as old as the first period structures in Ipswich, the dam is the last in a series of similar structures that served to enable and define the early industrialization of Ipswich. Can the historical significance of the dam site be preserved in some way, or is the retention of the dam itself the only option?
Thanks, Jim.
Okay.
Although I am not a historic expert, the historical experts have weighed in on this, and they are in favor of removing the dam. So just a couple points on that. It's not on any historic register. The Ipswich Historical Commission recently came out in favor of the removal. And then lastly, there are other ways to preserve this important history. And I've been told that there is actually a plan in place to figure out how to memorialize that. So I guess the feeling that we have is it's a structure whose function and purpose has long since passed, so removal and remembrance is the best option to preserve its memory.
Thank you.
It's me again.
Eric, why are you here?
I'll get some at the end.
A plaque or some pictures beside the river will fade, or in a building that won't be seen will not be a place of wonder for young children or a place of fond remembrance for Ipswich generational families. as one of our members once said, the dam has a function which is a monument to the town history that many immigrant families are very proud of and who feel betrayed by the Historical Commission. The membership of the Historical Commission changes year to year. I doubt under Mary Conley's guidance several decades ago that they would ever take this position if there was alternatives available, and that's what we maintain. There are alternatives available that could satisfy all of the community needs, and they haven't truly been investigated. And historic preservation is just one of those needs or those priorities that this community has. A fishway would allow visitors to enjoy the river, view the dam in the context and backdrop of the mill building, and observe any migrating fish that may eventually return each spring. So there are benefits to the community of accomplishing all of this, improving the fishway under NOAA sanctioned guidelines and funded by NOAA, as well as maintaining the historic site that represents. It's enhanced by that footbridge across the river at that point.
Thank you, Carl. Next topic. Non-removal advocates assert that there is limited liability in keeping the dam and that it is safe. Non-removal advocates further assert there is little to no ongoing expense associated with keeping the dam. Removal advocates assert the opposite. Please discuss, and if you have specific numbers, let us know what they are. Eric.
Thank you, Jim. I would refer to the December 22nd Finance Committee meeting of the town where IRWA made a presentation. That was reported
IRWA being?
Ipswich River Watershed Association.
Thank you.
And Wayne can probably speak to that better than I, since I think he was there. But in any event, as reported in the Ipswich local news, on December 20th, the Finance Committee did not agree with IRWA's presentation on the costs of dam maintenance. They thought it was higher, that the estimates were higher than they really were. They didn't agree on the liabilities. They even questioned IRWA about whether there was ever any liability, any injury from the dam, which is what the concern is. With liability, and the answer was no, probably not, and I think that's correct. I certainly haven't heard of that. And then a liability, some talk about the safety aspects of the dam and catastrophic results of dam failure. Well, first of all, looking at those 5,000-pound chunks of granite, they're not going to go anywhere just with the Ipswich River. But it's not a risk. There's not a risk. So, and in fact, some of the reports that were filed in this case tried to exaggerate the risk. Whether that was error, oversight, or whatever it did, the state had to call them out on it. So I really don't think anybody seriously asserts there's a safety and thereby liability issue. So you boil down to the costs on an annual basis, possible costs to repair. We've talked to present and past town employees who have said that there's perhaps a couple $1,000s of costs relating to the dam annually. And that is an allocation of town employee time. Those town employees are going to be paid whether or not the dam is here, so that really makes no difference. They also told us that most of their time that they put down for it was time talking to IRWA. So, the cost, there's some costs obviously, but they're not really material in the context of the issues we're talking about. They're not significant. So it's difficult for us to comment specifically on the costs because, frankly, we've been excluded, despite our requests, excluded from the analysis process. So we do believe that the town budget does not have a line item for maintenance. So I think the costs are minimal.
Yep, owning a dam is an awesome responsibility by state, federal, and local law. Dam owners are responsible for maintaining the dam, inspecting it every 5 years, keeping it in tip-top shape, and assume all liability and risk associated with them. These things are highly regulated. The question was asked what it costs the town. These are unrefutable estimates because you can look them up. It costs the town about $10,000 a year to maintain its responsibility under the law. The town also, every 5 years by law, has to hire a certified engineer to do a dam safety inspection. Those inspections are $30,000 to $50,000 each year. By the way, the last inspection done in 2019 required the town to invest about $50,000 in deferred maintenance, which it has yet not done pending this vote. And all risk and liability. I refer folks to the Lowhead Dam Institute, which in great detail outlines the risk associated with the structures. We simply prefer no cost over some costs, no risk over some risk, and we really feel these risks and costs are only going to increase over time as the dam ages. No dam eliminates all of those costs and risks.
Thank you. Keeping with cost as a theme, removal advocates assert that there will be zero cost to the town for removal of the dam, while non-removal advocates may assert otherwise. A discussion on that point, please.
I'll continue since I'm on. That's a pretty easy one.
That's fair.
The Ipswich Mills Dam is located at the head of tide, which are particularly damaging ecologically, and the federal and state agencies which regulate fisheries and ecology and dams have put our dam in Little Old Ipswich as one of the highest priority dams in the entire nation. It's rated at the top 5% of all dams for removal because of its severe ecological damage that it causes every day. As such, there are myriad funding opportunities that have been made available to the town. The state has invested about $500,000 and committed that the same. The federal government, we just got word last week, we made the list for next year's round of $1.2 million. And there's also a private commitment to fund the rest of it, or to create all of the town match, or to provide the town match that would be normally required. So the project, if it goes ahead, is 100% fully funded with contingency, and it will go forward with zero cost to the town of Ipswich.
Yes.
Thank you, Jim. First of all, we dispute the idea of severe ecological damage, but that's not this question. But one certain cost of dam removal is that there are many riverfront property owners in the Mill Pond and their neighbors that are convinced of property devaluation. They don't want to live next to a place that isn't looking like it does now, and in their mind it's not going to look so nice. That means there's either going to be lower tax revenues or tax abatement litigation costs, or both. Okay, that's one. You talk about liability threats. If the town dam is removed, if the boat traffic is anywhere near what it's been asserted to be by the great recreational asserted benefits, when people paddle down under County Road, unless they're doing it at exactly the right time, and unless they're at the right time, or they're pretty expert canoers, they're paddlers, it's dangerous. Our website, www.saveipswichmillsdam.org, shows those rapids, shows a canoe broken in half there. But anyway, the town has had to spend money rescuing people at much more benign rapids upstream by Mill Road. So that's a risk too, and that's a cost. Another cost is who's going to pay for the fish stocking that removal advocates have said is necessary. We've been told the state doesn't do that adequately. It's going to have to be done for a long time. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that. So there's a cost too. And these are only the monetary costs. We discuss environmental, recreational, historical, and other detriments and costs on our website. So, and ultimately, I'm glad that IRWA has lined up all of these grant sources, but what happens if the grant money proves inadequate?
Thank you. The industrial history of the dam site has raised the issue of contaminated sediment behind the dam, which could be released, travel downstream, and adversely affect shellfish beds. Some investigation of potential contaminants has been done. Some further investigations and mitigation steps would precede dam removal. Discuss the adequacy of these investigations and mitigation steps.
Thanks, Jim. We're not completely satisfied with the level of sampling that's been provided to date with regard to the settlements. There's a potential for irreparable damage, of course, to the critical resource of the Ipswich clamming industry that everybody's concerned about. It's clear that the safety of the shellfish beds must be an ironclad guarantee. Given the blocks upstream, this is a big and unknown risk. We cannot be too safe. Given uncertain benefits and other clear detriments of dam removal, why take this risk? One of our members, Steve Calder, who's worked with the EPA, NPDES, National Pollution Discharge Elimination System during his career, he's recommended a lot more testing. Some of his recommendations include a discharge into the river at the MBTA train over where they overnight the trains on the tracks down right near the river. That there should be chromium testings for the potential discharges at that location due to that MBTA use. He also recommends additional testings at Kimball Brook, and also the third street, the end of 3rd Street, because according to residents, it was long ago there was once a dump at that point. Further, he's interested in finding out more about PFAS or PFAS testing, which is the forever chemicals that everybody's been learning about in the news lately, and there was no provision for that in these sediment testings. And basically, we're taking an ultra-conservative approach because of the concern of our shellfish industry that's so critical in this community.
Thank you, Carl.
Back in 2012, an initial round of sediment sampling was conducted to see if, in fact, it was a concern and if the project could go forward. All of those tests came out clean, below state standards. And also, it should be pointed out that the Ipswich Mills Dam is a run-of-the-river dam, so most of the sediment flushes out during big floods. So any contamination that might have been in the pond is long since passed downstream already. Moreover, in order to move forward with a dam removal project, the standard that has to be met is that there be no adverse impact, including to sediment. And as part of the project and permitting process, an extensive sediment sampling and mitigation plan has been proposed. It has been approved by the State Department of Environmental Protection as well as the State Division of Marine Fisheries. It includes everything that Mr. Gardner just referenced, and we can be assured that that will occur before any project can go forward. And if anything is found, the project simply can't happen. Just last week, the Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries, which governs shellfish beds, endorsed the sediment sampling program and concluded that there will be no adverse impact on shellfish downstream, as did a memo from the town's Shellfish Advisory Board in January, which summarized this issue and concluded not only will there not be any adverse impact, there could be some benefits. Simply put, it's impossible to take a dam down if there will be any negative impacts on shellfish. So we can be assured that if the project goes forward, there will be no impact downstream.
Thank you, Wayne. I'm going to change our format a little bit with this next question. The next one was that I was interested in a single word or phrase what is the most important reason in your mind for removing the dam or not removing the dam? Let me just start with Eric first. What's your most, in a single word or phrase, what's the message you would like to leave in terms of not removing the dam?
Sure. I have a phrase. The uncertain and/or greatly exaggerated benefits of dam removal are far outweighed by the certain detrimental effects of dam removal. These are both described in detail on our website, www.saveipswichmillsdam.org. Briefly, detriments include, first, the river upstream is healthy and thriving. The only material benefit from removal might be return of migratory fish. As we know, there's water withdrawals that haven't been solved upstream. There's obstacles that haven't been solved upstream. They're not going to be able to migrate. They don't have breeding grounds now. They're not going back unless there's big changes. That's low possibility in our mind. If I can finish with my couple of detriments here.
Sure.
Removal of the dam causes a loss of the low water sanctuary for wildlife. The dam unquestionably results in a huge loss of recreational opportunities on a daily basis throughout the summer and throughout the year. There's a loss of aesthetics and property values, a loss of habitat for at least one currently endangered species, and a loss of beneficial upstream wetlands.
Thank you, Eric. Without being too much of a grammarian, that was a bit more than a single word or phrase. But anyway.
You started with
I
that.
started with the phrase. I gave you the backup for it if we wanted 2 minutes.
So I think we have time that if others want to take the same advantage of a single word or phrase, please do. Ann?
Thank you, Jim. I have a phrase, and then maybe Wayne might want to add on. But I think we all agree that where we are so lucky to live in an incredible place on this earth. And as stewards of this incredible place, we've been given a rare opportunity to act. These things don't come around very often. It's our responsibility to remove the dam for the benefit of people and the environment, and to ensure that this river survives so that we can pass it on and it will be healthy and sustainable for future generations in the natural world.
Carl, do you want to add anything?
I have to do. Oh.
Or do you need a minute to think?
No, I didn't know each one of us was going to do that. But yeah,
Well,
I would
did
say
change the format.
I would say that the most important thing from my perspective is the process that's been followed to date has not included the true consensus of the community. And if you have an asset like this, you should consider it seriously, and should not just environmental interests, but broaden that term to consider all the interests, of which the environment is one part of it. And if you have a low water situation and drought situations that are more severe and more frequent, you can't consider that to be, you remove the dam and Mother Nature takes over for you. And I would argue that if fishways are good for the Willowdale Dam and the Howlett Brook Dam, then they should seriously be considered for this dam.
Wayne?
This has been a 13-year process that involved multiple public meetings, lots of stakeholder engagement. This process has been done by the book, and dam removals are incredibly complex, and the permitting standard of no adverse impact, the community can be assured that no negatives that have been portrayed can happen. They're illegal, so we can be sure if in fact the permits are granted, it won't happen. Simply put, I put my faith in the more than 4,000 dam removal projects that have occurred over the past few years nationwide. There hasn't been a single instant of regret. They always are looked at in reverse as beneficial thing. Even the skeptics almost always come around. This is good for the environment, this is good for our community, and good for Ipswich.
Thank you, Wayne. Before we move to the last point, something I want to say is I'm concerned that the community has the wrong impression of what this ballot vote is all about. It's a very simple question. Do you favor removal of the Ipswich Mills Dam? Yes or no? The concern I have is that that's a definitive action on the part of the town. And it is not. It is not a definitive action on the part of the town. The select board has the definitive say on what happens here. It's not that's part of their normal responsibilities. That they have responsibility for determining what happens to all town-owned property, save school property, but all town-owned property. So that concerns me, that the community thinks that the result of the referendum is going to be one way or another. And so my next question is, the select board has placed the dam removal question on the ballot, but has not pledged to follow the results of the referendum. If the referendum result is contrary to your position or recommendation, what argument would you make before the select board that they act contrary to the referendum result? Who wants to start?
That's
Carl?
it says supposed to be non-removal goes first on this one.
Well,
Although you flip-flopped the last time, so.
let's take it that way then. So what argument would you make before the select board that they act contrary to the results of the referendum if the referendum is turns out one way or another? So from your perspective,
Against what we're proposing, yeah.
if the referendum says remove the dam, what argument will you make before the select board that they ignore the referendum?
Well, this is the one Carl and I agreed for me. There's also the question in terms of how it's worded of when they would and what has to happen first. But leaving all of that aside, I would argue, and our group would argue, that the process has been flawed. There have been numerous requests by people in our group to be included, to be allowed to have input into the process, to use a collaborative process like was used in Exeter, New Hampshire. That is so often cited by the removal proponents as the poster child. But the process wasn't even remotely parallel. There have been a couple meetings where there's been a limited amount of time for people to make comments and ask questions, but there's never been that sort of process where there's been any meaningful opportunity to participate in it. So, there's been a reference to a 13-year process that leaves no possibility of negatives. Well, I don't know why so many voters, so many people in our group feel that they have no voice, feel that they have been disenfranchised. That's really the reason that I've gotten involved in this. So anyway, the years of study focused on EBSCO. I mean, they focused on other things too, but the critical thing was EBSCO and whether there was going to be a problem there, and that's appropriate. But let's not have a misinterpretation. The neighbors, the paddlers, other people were not included here. So anyway, given the disparity of the exposure of the respective sides' positions and assertions, it's far from clear that the voters, if they say, let's take it down. I've talked to numbers of people. They say, oh, science says take dams down. Science says rivers are better off. Well, the facts are, and we have plenty of them on our website, and we've talked about them, that it's not such a clear picture in this case, okay? Let's see, moving on. The select board has to make a independent decision, and it really has to require that all questions raised by those seeking to save the dam have been thoroughly and fully answered before proceeding with the drastic and irreversible decision to destroy the dam. There hasn't been what's done in science or in the court system of really testing these things. It's been an advocacy approach, and there hasn't been both sides. So the select board, to wrap up, the select board should engage in an independent process and analysis of costs and benefits on a collaborative basis with all stakeholders involved, as was done in Exeter.
Thank you.
If I could just jump in, and I know Ann
Go ahead.
Ann can say, everything we just heard was not the case, and we're still in the middle of the process. The referendum simply enters the next phase of the process. We have to get 9 permits to undertake this project. Each and every one of those permits requires an extensive public engagement process. Everything you've asked for is required during those processes. So all we're simply advocating for is to take that next step. So all of those things are ahead of us. So that's where we are naturally in the process. So all of that engagement, all of that stakeholder connection and engagement is ahead of us still. So those things are still going to happen.
And I would additionally say that if I were given the opportunity, I would want to, remind the select board that Ipswich clearly demonstrated at the town meeting that they support removing the dam by a majority. And we're confident that the vote on May 21st will show the same support for dam removal. And the reason I'm confident in that is because I know that the residents of Ipswich understand that this is the sensible choice. It makes sense economically, and the science supports it. Removing the dam, it's our responsibility, and it's a win-win. It's better for the taxpayers, and it's better for the river.
So that would be your argument should the referendum fail. Okay, good.
I'd like to chime in too, if I would,
Well,
Ken.
I guess
The,
you're the only one who hasn't yet spoken on this
the-
topic, so
the-
please.
the emphasis that's always been, that we've always all witnessed.
I want you to focus on, if the referendum says take the dam down, how would you argue to the select board to ignore the results of the
Well,
referendum?
my response to that would be basically that the referendum shouldn't be painted in black and white as you described, dam or no dam. I think there's many more nuances here that haven't been investigated that can't be decided on a black and white vote like that. So I think the referendum itself is flawed. But beyond that, I think that the process that Wayne spells out is a permitting process, and it has to do with the complexity of the factors involved here. And I would go back to the very beginning. Whenever this topic came up and the public happened to be witness to it, the question was, is this going to cost us anything? Whether it be the application for a grant to study the removal of the dam versus retaining the dam, whether it be the cost of how ultimately who would be paying for the removal of the dam. In the town of Exeter, they were paying for the removal of the dam, and they developed a community consensus to decide that. That was a much higher head dam. It was constructed in a much different way. There was more hazards involved with that under flooding circumstances. We don't have the same situation here. And what would the Ipswich River Watershed Association, who've led this charge and who have a tremendously credible reputation with our community for trying to regulate the withdrawals in this Ipswich River watershed, if they're the only voice in this process, and the town has allowed them to take that role over for the select board, who should be the consensus finders, the consensus builders, to make sure that this process, right from the get-go, when their alternatives are supposedly studied in the beginning, that hasn't taken place.
Thank you. Well, thanks to everyone for participating in this discussion. I think the motivation for bringing us all together was well placed. I think it's timely. I think the issue will probably go on for some time. So thank you all for your participation.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.